Welcome back to another episode of Meredyth with a Y. I am your host, Meredyth Willits, and today I'm so excited because I have Dr. Diane Mueller on the show, and we are going to be talking about sex, sex, sex. She is, she's got her own podcast. She's got so much on her website. It is a plethora of information. She has a book out. I want it. I mean, come on. You guys have to stay with us. So here we go. Hello, everyone. This is Meredyth with a Y, and I am your host, Meredyth Willits. Today, we are going to go deep, changing lives, and I am giving you the keys to the castle. I mean, what woman doesn't want to not talk about sex ever again as long as she lives forever and ever after menopause, especially?
That's basically why we are talking about this today, is exactly that reason. And you know what's also so interesting is there was a survey that was done that actually showed that 69% of people want to talk to their doctor but don't. So we're in this like struggle of like this continued push or pull with like, I want to talk about it, I want to do it, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to do it. Like, this is scary, this is taboo, who's going to listen, who's not. So it's just so good that we're here today. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say the majority of my girlfriends are like, take it or leave it. I do it to, XYZ, keep him around, not make him cheat because that's what I'm supposed to do. Try to stay connected. Like it's the don't touch me. I think that we're making some real headway on social media talking about sex in this and it's giving us language. For my own self, I'm like, hi, if you only, hold my hand for that reason, every time you hold my hand, I'm going to think that's the reason. And then you're going to give me the ick when you hold my hand. Like we're starting to make those connections, I think, as humans, and then put language to it, which I always say is humongous. That social media gives us is language. It gives us like where we learn this. But how did you get in this realm? Like who wakes up and says, I want to be a double doctorate in sex?
Not me. I did not wake up and think that. No. I mean, so much of my life has been nonlinear and just through, I think how a lot of us get in these like taboo types of things is, through our own experience. So it was super interesting in my young 20s. I started experiencing this real intense vulvar pain. And it was like keeping me up at night, really annoying. Went to doc, and this was before I was in medicine, and went to just conventional docs, and everybody's like, you're fine. They ran some tests. They did all the pap smears, ran some STI testing or STDs as we called them back then.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was normal, which like, okay, well, that's great. But why am I awake at night with basically my vagina and my vulva hurting? And so I was telling my roommate this back in these days, and which was already edgy for me. And it was like even more edgy when she handed me this book, because at that point I had a very dogmatic upbringing and I had a lot of shame due to my upbringing and not really totally due to my upbringing, due to how I interpreted my upbringing.
Yeah.
Around sex, around self-pleasure, all of that. So not only did I have a problem down there, as I would call it back then, but I also was handed this book by my roommate on how to fix it. And the book was called Sex for One by Betty Dodson. So it was all about pleasure. It was all about masturbation. And like, it was like very intense. It was very, very intense. And so
good friend,
like very good friend, those types of friends, like, those are the good ones, right? That tell you what you need to hear, even though it's like what you like don't want to hear. So amazing friend, like life-changing friend. And went to bed that night with this particular book. And I was like, all right, I'm going to read this. I'm up in pain again. So I'll, do this very scary thing of open this book. And it wasn't just about self-pleasure, though. It was about all the ways this woman, Betty, was finding in her work that people were doing self-pleasure activities and things like pain were going away. So like no wonder my friend gave me this book, because it really felt like reading it, I was like, oh, this is made for me. This book is made for exact problem. So I got very brave and I self-pleasured for the first time. And I did not spontaneously bust into a ton of flames or anything like that, that I was probably on some subconscious level afraid of.
Yeah.
And my pain went away. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And pain was back the next night, self pleasured again. Pain went away and tried it for a few more times. And eventually the pain was totally gone. So, it's one of these like moments that I think we get in life, like growth oriented humans, that is like happens to us. And it was a moment that like completely made me question my beliefs around sexuality, around things like it changed the questions I was asking myself to, and started asking myself questions like, well, if this part of me is bad or shameful or wrong, how could it make me feel like, how could it fix my pain? How could it fix my symptoms? Like,
Yeah.
the more I discovered, the more I read, it's like learning about like, oh, the clitoris is a part of our female body that at the time I knew it was a part of the female body. I didn't really know anything about it. And then
Yeah.
later learning that like its only job is pleasure. So then it's like questions like, well, how could I have a part that has literally no other function other than pleasure? And yet, how could it be bad for me? That sort of thing. So that was that was the interest, the initial interest in just learning more about sex and sexuality. And I've had many different phases of my career. I have a couple other businesses I run, so many different phases until I got into actually deciding to make a career out of this. But kind of the final phase where I was like, okay, I got to start actually really putting this work out into the world was really after I got divorced and started in my next relationship applying, like, right from the beginning, a lot of these techniques that I've learned, not only around sex but around communication, around relationships, and really just seeing the difference in the contrast of a relationship around like, oh, this is what happens when we keep passion in and we keep it alive, and how our relationship is, even in helping raise 3 step kids,
Yeah.
which, adds a huge other complication. But all of that, it's like that it's been so much easier in this time period from a standpoint of like passion and health of a relationship compared to many previous relationships. So, after I went through the trauma of divorce, it was just realizing like, oh, I want to do things differently. I want to be different. I want a different type of relationship. I want to show up differently to this. And I want to help people stay happy and passionate in their marriages or their long-term relationships. So that was kind of the final straw for me around like just really realizing like, yeah, this is taboo, but I gotta talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is after X amount of years, a lot of times sex can become transactional. It can be the box that we're checking once, twice, 3 times a week or month. Um, it could be, I mean, a myriad of things. What's like the first step, would you say, to get out of the box check, I did my duty, transactional, because when I feel like when you're sitting in life, right? Like the day is going on and your dinner and you're so preoccupied. Like life is so fast these days. Sports, kids, schools, getting ready to, it's this, right? And then you sit down, maybe you watch a little television, whatever. Then you go to bed and now doom scrolling, right? Like doom scrolling has probably crushed sex even more for people. Not that I'm speaking from experience by any stretch
And
of the imagination,
I've never
but
doom scrolled, never,
I'm never
never.
doom scrolling. Uh, but like, what is like that first step? I mean, as we're sitting here talking, I'm like, okay, first of all, no phone in the bedroom. Second of all, throw the TV out the window. Like all the distractions so that it kind of brings it back to self and all that good stuff. What in your line of work would you say, okay, you don't want to get a divorce. Once you started, you're happy you started sex. Like once you get there, once you're in it, once you put the phone down, you're happy you showed up today. But it's just getting from phone in hand, watching Walking Dead, to actually being intimate. What's that step?
I mean, there's so many steps, but a early step that I often have couples do is starting with making a values list of all the things they value in their life the most. And hopefully, if you're saying you want to be with your partner is basically right there at the top, right? But you want to make your values list your top like 5, 10 values. And then I would encourage you to make like a pie chart. and make 24 pieces of pie for 24 hours of the day. Hopefully 7 to 9 of them are, you're writing sleep in there is what you're doing. And it's a point of awareness to say, does your partner have a piece of the pie? And so many times I find that this is a very big aha moment, because there's this discrepancy, right? That when it's kind of like any other data tracking device, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I think I eat the right amount of calories, or I think I eat the right amount of macros, or I think I eat the right, take the right amount of steps. And
Damn it.
right.
Damn it, you actual numbers.
Totally. It's like that. Oh, wow, I'm supposed to get 10,000 steps. I think I must be getting close to that. Wow, I'm getting 2,000 steps. Those kind of things. I think I'm at 1,800 calories. Crap, I'm at 3,400 calories or whatever it is, right? So it's those aha moments. And it's the same thing that I find in this exercise around. It's that data to say, very first step, is there a discrepancy between what you are having as your number one value and the time that you're giving this value in your life? Does this person, if they're your number one value, and hopefully they are one or two if they're your partner, and if you don't have a piece in your pie for them, whether we're talking about sexual intimacy or not, whether we're just talking about time, in general, just time for them, that's the first step to say, do they have a piece of the pie? And forget sex initially, just are they in your pie chart? And if not, it's probably not going to be a good relationship, or a relationship that lasts, if you don't start finding a way to get them in the pie. So that's really the first thing. And and beyond that, there are different steps we can do from the erotic repair standpoint. But the point you brought up earlier is okay, so many women are like, well, I'm going to do it because I know I should, or I don't want him to cheat, or all these examples. So one of the second pieces of information that's really helpful to women, for women especially, but for men too, to understand, is that when we're talking about arousal and desire are not the same things. And so men get desire before arousal, and women get arousal before desire. And so what I mean by that is, for men, so desires of the mind, right? So for men, it's wow, my partner walked across the kitchen and I like the way their butt moved, and I like the way their breast moved, and yummy, 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 I want that. That's in the mind. That's desire, right? Then the body responds, the genitals respond, he gets a hard on, whatever. For women, we are taught that we're the same way. Men are taught that women are the same way. So women, what we're doing oftentimes before we wind up engaging in sex is we're waiting to want it. We're waiting to want it in our head. We're waiting to have that voice that kicks on that says, I have desire. I see my partner and I'm thinking, yummy, I want that, and to go to bed. And that can happen in the new relationship standpoint, and new relationship period, because of all these other cocktails and chemicals going on. But the problem is that is not the way women are innately wired. So once those new relationship energy chemicals go away, then at that point, then we move into what is the normal woman desire map, which is arousals before desire. So this is why women can get into bed and then she starts to slowly get aroused. Arousals in the body. So she's doing this, she's not really in the mood, but she's doing it. And she's starting to feel more sensations, and 15, 20 minutes, hopefully that long goes by. And then all of a sudden she has a thought. And that thought is something like, this kind of feels good. That's when desire, now she has desire, right? And then she gets done. And then it's that thing of looking at her husband, her partner, her lover, and being like, well, that was actually kind of good. Why don't we do that more often?
Yep.
Right. And it's
every
because,
time.
yeah, exactly. I've been through it over and over and over again, but now I know how to work with it because I know what this is. And so many times as women, we're expecting our desire map to look like a man. So we're expecting to feel that impulse in our brain to say, drive us to have sex. It doesn't work that way for women. We have to actually understand the value, which is one of the reasons I spend so much time helping women understand how this can actually regulate them and change their lives and do so much for them, and help men understand that one of their jobs is to help women actually get aroused 20 minutes, oftentimes before we even come close to thinking about anything like penetration, because we need that time to actually get into the body, and without the commitment of it going anywhere, without that expectation to just say, you know what, this is just about helping her not feel overwhelmed, helping her drop all the things in her day, because women don't compartmentalize like men. We know that. So it takes us as women more time to drop that, to get into our body. And when she's in her body, now we can start to experience getting on the same side as desire. Now we can get more into the more sex acts, but it takes that commitment to that arousal, that commitment to that, into helping, helping the woman get there
Yeah.
before we jump straight to sex.
Which tends to be either, and that's the other thing I always talk about is with clients and so on and so forth, being a life coach is, women wear so many hats, and it's not like, always CEO wearing your mini skirt or your pencil skirt and heels into the house, having a steak dinner and going to bed. It's breastfeeding, barf, poop, dogs, laundry, gross dishes, and then we're miraculously supposed to float up the stairs and become the sex kitten
Right.
4 seconds later. And it's like, I don't know how to tell you this, but I've been called mom 700 times today, and it's like, how do I get out of, you know, and we're talking societally now, right? The
Yeah.
virginal mother, and now all of a sudden we're the seductress, sex kitten, just because we crossed the bedroom threshold or whatever, because the kids happen to be gone that night. There's all these expectations that are on women to be everything to everyone at every minute of the day and exactly the way you're supposed to be. And I think that from when I'm speaking to normal, not sex derived client coaching conversations, it's just like, I don't know how to switch that part of my brain off.
Yeah. And that's some of that is due to everything that you've said. And some of it also is like men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and understanding the difference between testosterone in the brain and estrogen in the brain. And this is like the classic stereotypical example of like man's watching sports game, woman's trying to get a hold of him, and he's like so focused that he doesn't even hear her. And she's like, "Why are you ignoring me, honey?" And it's literally that, it's like their capacity to focus is one of their superpowers, meaning
Yeah.
even if they did have 15,000 different things in a day, I mean, it's going to be different from a standpoint of breastfeeding and all that. But take that stage out of it. It's like, I know so many men that are running around and they're working 2 jobs and they're driving the kids around and they're picking up, the dishes and mowing the lawn and, have just as many responsibilities as the women do. But yet they can just switch from, hey, I am here and I did all these things, and boom, they're like on sex like it's nothing. And it's because of like what testosterone does to a man's brain around focus, versus like the classic woman thing, right? Is like, well, I'm filming this podcast. I have dinner on the stove. I'm recognizing that my curtains are out of place. So I see the pillow behind me that needs adjusting. I can tell that the kid's
Yes.
like crying across the street. And it's like all of this
Yes.
information, right?
Yeah.
And that's our superpower, which is this diffuse level of awareness, but it's also like any superpower, it has its, it has its kryptonite. It has its this dark side. And that dark side is not being able to just like cross a threshold like a man does and like, well, now I'm just focused on sex because it's sexy time. Like, no, we don't work that way.
No, we're like, squirrel, squirrel. What? I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of women that are turning, that they're entering menopause, they're doing the testosterone. Or is that your thing? Like, where's your head at as far as like hormone replacement, testosterone for women, et cetera, et cetera? Do you think that we're needing that, or do you think that we're missing what you're talking about, and then they're turning kind of to the pill to make us want to have sex type thing?
I think it's both. I'm 45. I'm in perimenopause. I'm on testosterone replacement therapy. I'm
Okay.
on estrogen replacement therapy. I'm a huge fan of them. Bioidentical is always my recommendation. Is much more, it's much more in alignment with our own body's structure of these chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of times that I've seen these things majorly turn a woman's life around, so many. And the number of times I've seen like, wow, like I don't have hot flashes anymore. I'm sleeping great. And all these things are wonderful. My weight's coming off. And there's like something that I see happen a lot, which is, well, I got a boost in my libido when I started the testosterone, and 3 weeks later, it's back in the toilet. So
Mm.
I really think it's a both and kind of thing. I think, anything that I find, anything that's more of like a chronic thing in medicine, like, of course, like acutely in medicine, we can have strep throat and the strep throat goes away and it's like one thing and we fix it and we feel better. And that's true in acute medicine. But in chronic medicine, what I've seen over and over and over again is there's more than one reason. So, a lot of my work is like looking at all of these other things while encouraging and supporting people to get like the right testing done, to look at their
Mhm.
hormones and, and learning what hormones are the ones to be on versus the ones that are more scary. But, from that standpoint, I think a lot of it comes down to this kind of conversation around the more we can, as women, understand that oxytocin, for example, which is our orgasm hormone. When we have an orgasm, we increase this hormone by 200 to 500% in our blood. There is nothing else that comes close to this, not hugging,
Wow.
not kissing, not petting dogs. Nothing comes close to this. The level of the ability of this hormone, when it's increased to those levels naturally in the blood, to reduce cortisol, our stress hormone, it's cortisol's antidote. It's actually why I think we have a clitoris as women, in many reasons, is because we do have more of this thing because of the overwhelm of this diffuse level of awareness. It is oftentimes harder to regulate cortisol. So what do we have as our way of self-balancing? We have a pleasure button. It's
Yeah.
not just a button. We have these pleasure nerves, this pleasure zone, right? That allows us to release so much oxytocin to bring our cortisol down. So I talk
So
about
you're
the
trying to
why.
tell me
Yeah,
the more sex I have, the more oxytocin I have, then cortisol that makes your stomach fat,
correct.
and all the like stiff hips and
Correct.
all that stuff is all correlated?
Not only is that true, but we see studies that oxytocin reduces anxiety,
Yeah.
improves depression, improves insomnia, helps with brain function, and even builds bone. So when you look at that, it's like, well, look at that list of symptoms. Like we throw hot flashes in there, and now you have the list of like the most common menopausal symptoms, right?
Yeah.
And like the way we mitigate that is through oxytocin. But the vicious cycle that women are in is like this exact thing you're bringing up of like, but I'm too tired to have sex. So then I don't get the oxytocin. So then my cortisol's more out of balance. Now I don't want to have sex even more. Now I'm not using my body's own stores or own way of self-regulating. So that's why I educate so much on the why, because in the beginning, there is this level of like commitment to say, I'm going to do a pleasure practice. But within that, we want to work and get our partners involved to say, like, hey, in order for me to show up this way, this is how my body works. In order for me to do this, I need time and I need practice, like just getting back in my body. And so a lot of erotic repair for couples that are like, when a woman's not interested in sex or they're just having obligatory sex, is to actually take sex off the table and say, for the next 2 to 4 weeks, all we're doing is massage, and it can lead to massage with happy endings, but to start to actually reframe away from like what you brought up at the beginning of this, which is, like you hold my hand and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness, like, ugh, does he want something now? Now I have another obligation.
Yeah.
Right. Or like another one I hear is like, the butt slap in the kitchen. And the butt slap is like, oh, man walks by his wife, like slaps her on the butt, just like as a way of being like, hey, baby. And, he means it as flirty. And she's like, oh my God, like now, like, is he coming on to me? Now I have to deal with that. And so we want to get touch
Why
uncoupled from
are we
that.
there though? Why are we there?
Yeah.
When did the guy become the gropey kind of pain in the ass and the woman become the prude, bothered by sex? Like, when did that happen? Is that a societal thing? Is that a 2025-ish thing? When did we start hating all of that as women, and when did that become normal or cool or part of the program?
I mean, we can go back to like archaic times, but in modern day society, I'll take us back to like Freudian times when, Freud had this belief that if women at menarche, when they start their menses, if they did not move from clitoral orgasms to vaginal only orgasms, like if they were not able to have purely vaginal only orgasms at 13 or so, when they started to have their period, that they were frigid. And so we were taught, it's like weaved into society, at that point of time, around this way of pleasure is good. And this way of pleasure that is only really attainable like through either, masturbation with something like a vibrator, but more commonly through penis, right? Through penetration. Like
Mhm.
if that was not there, it was wrong. And so for so long, I think we've been in this world, like back from those times, around men having this real pressure on them to be like, this is how I show up as a man. And if I can't provide for a woman immense pleasure in this one way, there's something wrong with me. So like that, there's that pressure on them. So they're coming at it from their own level of societal, challenge. And then women being like, well, this isn't working. So now I'm faking it to end it. And nobody's happy. But I think, in
Mm.
answer to your question, I think it goes back to the way we've been taught about sex from even those days, the ways back in like, vibrators were invented originally because of hysteria, because of women going to their doctors and feeling like they were anxious and they were feeling all these like these mental emotional things. Doctors initially doing things like oral, like, or not oral, like finger, like penetration with fingers to bring them to orgasm, and then like that would cure their emotional dysfunction. And for people that are listening and not watching, I'm saying this in major air quotes. um and so, that would cure them. And so then that's like doctors were having like, this was happening so often, and doctors like hands and wrists were getting sore
Jeez
from
Louise, can you
fingering.
imagine all this?
Right. It's like that is where we're coming from in our society. And there's an element where it's like we've never gotten out of like that level of dysfunction in our belief around what sex is supposed to be like.
Don't you think this a lot of it is wrapped up in religion and, like, we're not supposed to as women, you're not supposed to want it? Where did that come from? Where did it come from that we're not supposed to want sex? Where did that, like, it's okay in the beginning when you're dating, but then as soon as you get married, like, there's some weird switch where you just like, "Oh, stop it. Oh, leave me alone." Where did that come from that it's I don't know if the word is cool or normal or the way you should behave, like, not to be the vixen as a married woman
Yeah, it's a real Madonna whore complex, right? Around like needing to be this innocent version type of person
with children.
with children,
It's
right?
we're so
But then
stupid.
also to have this element of being like the wild seductress at the same
Yeah.
time. And I think things like I'm talking about, around like Freudian, complex and all that, I do think that's a part of it. I think there's a lot of religion, but I like to like not slam religion, because I do think there's an element with like how we're teaching religion. Like my personal feeling is like for many people and situations, religious teachings can provide, many of them, like lots of values and lots of structure that are real positive. But unfortunately, and like growing up in the Catholic Church, so I know this personally, is like with that oftentimes comes like this sense of like shame, which is why I say like I started having my own questions were like, well, if God gave me this part of my
Yeah.
body, how could it be bad? Like how can this be
Right.
like made in the image of him and all these things? So I do think religion has a component of it. I also think there's an element of around like just like not talking about something makes it taboo, right? Like I have a friend who talks about being a kid, and it's very very common for kids to have accidental orgasms with like masturbating but not knowing it. Like I had my first orgasm in grade school. I didn't know what it was, but we had to like climb up these flag poles to ring these bells, and and that was like a gym exercise, and I was like an athlete, and I was getting so frustrated. I remember, because like I'd get halfway up, and all of a sudden my body would start tingling and these weird things would happen, and I would just like slide back down the pole. And like years later, when I actually had my first real orgasm, in the story I told earlier, I was like, oh, that's why I couldn't get to that bell, right? So it's like very common. I have a friend that she was masturbating on like the sidearm of a chair as a very young child, maybe 5 or something. And what her mom said to her when she saw this behavior was, honey, that's a beautiful act, but it's something that we do in private. So we move your chair to your bedroom so you can do that in private. And all it takes is like something like that around, hey, just, just like not shaming it, just like
Yeah.
teaching the child how to do it correctly versus like, that's bad, that's dirty. And all it takes is that one thing said just slightly wrong because we
Yeah.
don't know how to have that conversation. And we're making this so taboo to talk about. And boom, there's the complex.
Well, I think that a lot of that comes from, emotional immaturity. I know for myself, like sometimes you have to take a breath because you're like overwhelmed with like, okay, something's going on right now as a mom, I have to figure this out. And this could be anything like that your kids do. And then there's that one where you're just like, okay, what do I do about this? Do I need to talk about this? Like, how do I address this? I always, there's a great book, I think it's called What's the Big Deal? And it's basically you start the book, and at the end of the book, kids know about masturbation, private parts, sex, the whole thing. It's all in cartoon. I've given it to 100 people. You hand it to your kid when you're done with the conversation. They could take it back to their bedroom. I'm pretty sure there's probably even an app, right?
Yeah.
And it's heaven because it takes you through for kids. But those conversations, or like you're saying, the private part, the masturbation, the kids, all those things, you want to do it right. But I think so often when you aren't having these conversations, and we're going to talk about like how not talking about this affects us by ourselves and as a society. But when we're not having these conversations as adults, and then here we come with our kid has this situation with the couch's arm, the arm of the couch, and we're just like, Mayday, like this is wait. And then we screw it up as parents. So basically, talking about this, having this be a normal part of the human experience. I think that's what we miss so often is, when you look at priests, when you look at nuns, when you look at a lot of people in spiritual community, they're like the meat suit, the meat suit. They talk about it as if our physical body is like this extra piece of garbage that we just have to deal with. Um, but I think that when we look at sex and sexuality and sexual function as being a normal part of the human experience, it gets less weird, it gets less dirty, it gets less clunky. How are we as a society failing, and what's the cost of that?
And I think you're exactly right. I think there's a lot of ways that this is, that we're failing in a lot of ways that we have the cost. Anything from as simple as people experiencing so much shame and guilt, anything from kids experiencing like this level of shame, anything from slut shaming just for people that want to have more sex in safe and consensual ways. Like there's so many mental health components of this. Not to mention like people in these marriages that are just like there for obligation and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not somebody that is, a trauma therapist, so I can't really speak to the whole other realm of, of rape and all of these other horrible
Yeah,
things and the impact there, but at least to name them. But it's like from the standpoint even of conversation, right? It's like we know there's surveys, for example, that people that say that they are the happiest in their marriages or in their long-term relationships are having sex at least about once a week. And then if you take those couples and look at how much they're talking about sex, 92% of them have sex as part of their conversation. They normalize it. So, and like putting all that together, we can say, okay, well, the people that are reporting to have the happiest of marriages and long-term relationships are not only having regular sex, but they're talking about their sex life. They're talking about what they like. They're talking about how to make it better. So if we look at that, it's like family breakdown can be, impact, definitely divorce. It's certainly not the only reason for divorce, but a lot of times when I have like talked to people that cheat, a lot of times people in like relationships that cheat, and I'm not condoning this by any means, but I'm just adding a level of understanding that a lot of times when it comes up, it is coming up because some partner is feeling like, wow, if I could just have like human touch and my
yeah,
partner just is not even touching me. And there's all sorts of reasons why might not be happening. So I'm oversimplifying this and
yeah, yeah.
I'm trying not to trigger anybody here. But, point being, like, it is a level of impact, right? Around, like, what is this impact having? How is that impacting our kids when we're not in relationships that are happy and passionate and thriving, and they see that, and they're learning then, oh, it's okay, then it's acceptable to be in this kind of relationship. So I think the long-term implications are, real serious, was one of the main reasons why I'm talking about this taboo topic.
Yeah. I mean, what when you do therapy,
I don't do therapy. I'm not a therapist.
counseling,
I'm a sex
coaching,
educator. I do all of my courses and content is on education to people, teaching them how to talk about sex, teaching them how to bring novelty and passion back. Everything I do is through education, through course content, and through stuff like this to help people get their, sex life back on track. But it's all through education.
education.
Yep.
So, when when I'm listening to you, it sounds like, okay, first step, let's you know, let's talk about Fight Club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that there's a big piece of this of even identifying, okay, how many calories are we eating a day? How often are we actually having sex? How often? My husband, he's a sales guy, and he's always about accountability, and like, it's you make 70 phone calls a day, you're gonna finally sell something.
Yeah.
It's
The
all
numbers
about the
game.
numbers game, right? And so, like, when I'm listening to you talk about this, it's like, the more you talk about it, the more you're going to do it. The more you do it, the more you're going to do it. The more you do it, the more normal. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you can't help but become in contact, because based on your pie chart, or the pie thing at the beginning of
Yeah.
us talking about this, you can't sit there and say, my spouse is the most important thing, and color in, 3 shades or whatever of the 24-hour, and then watch television, doom scroll, work the other 8 hours, drive the other 2 hours, and sleep the other 12 hours, and say, I wonder why my relationship is screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, and then one another answer for this is actually scheduling sex, which initially when I say that, everybody, it's like not everybody, but so many people are like, "Well, I don't want to do that because that's not spontaneous." And there's two things to say about that. One is just to bring a level of awareness around, like, in the beginning when you're falling in love and you're all in that hot new relationship energy, and much of the time you are scheduling it. You have date night. You don't live
Mm.
together. So you have to say Friday night we're going out, and you know that there's a high chance after you're dating a little while that you'll be having sex. So you shave your legs, you put on the cute lingerie, you do whatever it is to make you feel sexy, right? Like, you are actually scheduling it. And it's really only
That's
when you,
so funny that you say that, because
right?
I would never have looked at dating and saying, we're going to go away, we're going to go on a date. You don't think of that as scheduling sex, but when you say it, it's so true. Like, you
Yeah,
really are gearing up for that being the end all be all of the night.
exactly.
But when you live
Exactly.
together and you sleep together every single night, then all of a sudden it becomes clunky and awkward and forced because we're scheduling it. I love that visual. I'm such a visual person. So now I'm like going, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's like when it is hot, we are actually scheduling it. And and that's what's driving the motivation towards it too, because one of the things that drives motivation is dopamine. And dopamine is all about newness and like that anticipatory thing of being like, okay, are we going to have sex? Is this going to happen? Are we going to, like, what am I going to wear? How is this going to go? And like that anticipation, I want this, I want this, I want this. And that gives us like low level dopamine, and then it's reward, and we get that thing, and we get that dopamine spike. And so now we have this like chemical thing saying like, oh yeah, I want that, I want that, I want that again. And then we see each other every day, and if we do it, we're so exhausted and we don't have a plan around, and we haven't talked about it. So then we get into the same old sexual script where it's like, I kiss you for 2 minutes, you kiss me here, you rub my breast for 2 seconds, now we're penetrating, we do our same 3 positions over and over again. And so there's nothing new. And the other thing that happens when we schedule it is, when we schedule it, few things happen. One, if we say, okay, well, Saturday at 4, that's our sex date. 2 different things that can start to take the pressure off, where if it's like Tuesday and it's like, oh my goodness, we're holding hands or you smack my butt, now I can start to say, okay, for sure, we're going to have this Saturday. I'm committing to this, just like I'm committing to the gym or anything else. So we can start to alleviate the pressure to be like, it's okay if I say no tonight. I can stop feeling guilty because I'm exhausted, because I know now I'm committing to give this to my relationship on the weekend. So it can help with some of that. But it can also help to bring that novelty and that desire back, because then when we start to say, okay, well, now it gives us the week to be like, okay, when we do this, like, I want to try a new position. What are we going to try? Something like that. And then you can start to flirt around the week. And this is, I'm giving you people a lot. This is definitely not where I guide people. It's like these are more advanced skills and steps. But over time, we can say, oh, yeah, like, honey, I'm really excited to try this new position. And this is what I'm excited about. And it starts to give this anticipation. When we're saying things like that, the brain's like, oh, there's something new happening. There's something new happening. Dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Then we get that
Okay.
reward of trying that new thing. And there's that huge dopamine boost again, kind of like the beginning. And for anybody that's like, well, what about the spontaneity? Like, you can have, it's not saying you can't have that type of sex too. But if you're scheduling it, that's like kind of the guarantee around, like, I'm prioritizing it. And then it also allows people to, the idea with this is then trying to find a way through babysitters, through other things, to be like, okay, well, I'm going to take an hour before this. And all I'm going to do in that hour is take a bath. All I'm going to do in that hour is take a nap. All I'm going to do in that hour is do, yoga, something to like get you back in your body, so that it's not just this boom, I just like finished 18,000 things. And now I'm
Yeah.
immediately supposed to launch into sexy time.
What's interesting when you were talking about like the smacking my butt and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's not that Saturday night. It was interesting because I was like watching that in my head and I'm like, what if every day there has to be like 5 touch points, right? But we only do it on Saturday, which means that all of those touch points throughout the week are just moments of flirting and love with no possibility of parole.
Yeah.
They're just like like that does not like, so if you do this, if you do this, if you do this in the kitchen, if you give me a kiss on the neck, if you give me a hug from behind, if you do all of these things, I don't care. There's no end game. It's just flirting. You're still going to have to wait till Saturday. It kind of makes it anticipatory. It kind of makes the during the week fun. I don't know, because now I know you're doing those things only because you want to, not as a route to anything else. It's just because you like me. It's just because you want to do those things. I find that fascinating.
It's actually a huge, and this is used in the sex therapy world a lot. And like I said, I'm not a therapist. I teach people this versus like sitting down and doing like the counseling work and like one-on-one. But it's the end result's the same, right? Which is, in the beginning of erotic repair, it is a lot of like taking that end result off the table, so
Yeah.
that touch can do exactly what you're talking about. So it can be just about the touch and just about the love. And we can actually begin to get to that point where it's like, oh, we're actually touching and just getting to enjoy and receive and give that, and start to repair some of the expectation and the obligation that gets associated. Like, we have to start uncoupling touch
Yeah.
and obligation. And that's
Yes.
like a
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that's like a neurological thing that takes some time, because when people have been together decades, oftentimes, beautiful as that is, we have these like neurological like triggers and things, and they're
Yeah.
happening. And like, so it takes some time to unwind that, that is all that is all that is. And not only is it like the neurological unwinding with our partner, it's really that neurological unwinding of society, because we're not taught this. So much I feel like of that society. I mean, I know for a long time, for me, multiple partners. It wasn't like one partner in particular. It was just like that programming from upbringing, from the media, these kind of things. It was like, oh yeah, if they're touching me, it's because they want something.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to decouple.
And my girlfriend used to tell me that all the time. I remember she'd be like, "Oh my god, he started rubbing my back last night, or he offered a foot massage." And as a guy, you're probably hearing that going, what is wrong? But
Right.
they don't realize that we have turned into Pavlov's dog.
Correct.
We're like, oh God, he's rubbing feet. And what is that? It just feels, it does feel gross. Why does it feel gross? How does that start to happen that when we're dating and we get a back massage, or we're, the beginning of our marriage, even we get a back massage and you're just like, oh my God, I love you so much. You're the greatest person in the whole world. And by year 7, by year 10, we get a back massage and we want to go get the ice pick. Like, what is that happens that we get the ick?
I think it's a few different things. I mean, there's obviously like little triggers along the way. And, an analogy that my friend Sierra and Rano of this organization called Eden World have given me that I love is like all these little things that kind of like bother us around like, oh, like, hey, every time you give a back rub, I have this expectation that it's going to lead to sex rather than like saying that initially when it's happening, we bury it. We don't say anything. We just pull
Mm,
away. And every time we do that, and men do it too, right? It's not, this is a bi-directional thing. And all these little tiny things, it's like our love boat, if we're using a boat as an analogy, it's like all those little things that get unsaid. It's like one little tick in the boat, one little tiny hole, and there's just like a baby leak, and it's no big deal. And it's like, oh, I didn't say anything, no big deal. The next time next day you're fine. But then there's another baby leak and another baby leak. And there's all these like baby micro traumas that in isolation are literally not going to sink your ship. But when people have been together, like you said, like 5, 10, 15, 20 years, all of a sudden, all these baby micro holes in your love boat now are actually like a legit leak that have not
yeah.
plugged up. So I think it's just, we oftentimes dismiss the importance of these things around like it's not that big of a deal. There's so many wonderful things, and we don't bring it up. And instead of actually having those kind of conversations when things are good and really healthy. And it doesn't mean we can't reverse that, but what it does mean is the neurological system is programmed a certain way. And like I said, there's these couplings of these ideas,
Yeah.
and we need to start uncoupling them. And another thing that's really helpful, and in order for this to work well, both people need to get on board, is starting to bring more praise in the other person about what we love and what we love around touch. And this really is especially helpful if sex is off the table for a little while, because then you can start to say like, wow, it was so nice when you just came up and kissed my neck, and just I could feel in that moment that love. And it was so nice to not feel the expectation of it, but just really feel like that spot. I love that spot. You're so good at just giving me love in that way. Because another thing that happens in long term is we all think we're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So in order to
Yeah.
repair this, we have to like actually help people like see all the ways they're doing it right and build those things up so we can repair it. And people aren't just in this state of like constant goodness, I can never please her. I can never please him, which is like oftentimes where people end up.
Yeah. What would you say, like, is something that you wish young people, like, knew? Like, what's a good, I don't know, one of those things that when you're 16, 17, 22, whatever, that you're like, God, I wish more people knew this.
I mean, from a sex standpoint, I think it's really important for young kids to understand like the power of oxytocin and attachment, especially for women.
Oh my
To
God.
like, right? Like, I wish I would have known that.
I
Like,
wish I would have known that I was chemically attaching myself to the
correct.
I've always told my kids, whatever your first kiss, holding hands, it doesn't matter what it is, first date, that's the first forever. You can't undo the first,
Yes,
right? And so be mindful of whatever first kiss, because that's it. Someone says, "Who's your first kiss?" I'm going to say Brian Newman. That was
right.
my first kiss. It was homecoming night, my 10th grade sophomore year of high school. That never gets undone.
Never gets
Period.
undone.
Right.
Right.
And I think that people try to decapitate the chemical addiction of oxytocin. I'm going to say for women especially, when it comes to sex. Like, you are literally gluing yourself to this person, whether you like it or not. I don't
Yeah.
care. I know there's a lot of people on social media. They're like, oh, I'm going to get mine. I'm going to get mine, cause I'm a woman and I don't care and whatever. And maybe that's great. But I will tell you, as a girl of the 80s and 90s, nope, that was not my experience.
Not my experience either. And like, I remember the first man I had sex with, Joe was his name, and we were dating and whatnot. And it was 2 months in, and I definitely got very attached to him after sex, and he broke up with me not shortly after that, and, like, the level of devastation. But I'm sure I was coming across at that point where it's like most people would probably, like, in hindsight, I'm sure I was clingy, I'm sure I was doing things that were annoying behaviors.
Same.
Right? And, like, it would have been so helpful to go into that and know, like, "Hey, this is what's, likely going to happen. This is what I'm going to probably need to feel emotionally safe. This is because of that, this is what I need to feel like if I'm attaching myself to somebody this way, that they are really invested in the relationship and they care more about the sex and all those things." Like,
Yeah.
I would have loved to know that, or at least at a minimum, understand that, oh, this is my hormones taking over my mind. And maybe this is like actually truly how I feel on like the depths of like my soul versus like I'm on drugs literally in my brain because of all
Literally on
the hormones.
drugs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's like it would have been so helpful to know. And I think it's such an important message, especially for women, like you said, but also for men, because men, and I don't know, like I was a child of the 80s and 90s too. And so I don't know other than what the kids in my life tell me exactly what it's like to date these days. But I know back then for sure there was this element where men didn't know this, and so they were getting frustrated with women and maybe like not saying things that were kind versus almost understanding, like, like the 14-year-old in my life, my boyfriend's son, and I'm teaching him, like we're teaching him things like this. So it's like, hey, understand that this is how you express kindness, even if you're going to say, hey, this woman's not for me. This is how you do this in a way that's kind, because
Yeah.
this is probably her level of attachment with this. So teaching men how to show up and teaching boys how to show up with more kindness.
When we're sitting here talking, what's coming up to me through you and I's discussion right now is, I wonder if there's a part of us, right, that when we have sex and the oxytocin happens and we do get connected, we get that addiction, right? And then that's removed from us out of we have no control over it. The person breaks up with you, right? And then you have to kind of strong arm self. So you have to strong arm yourself. You have to be okay. I'm okay, even though you're not okay. Like, it's not okay being broken up with. It's not okay, right? And I wonder if, as we move through a relationship and marriage, if there's a part of us that becomes okay with detachment from that sexual experience, to be okay if this person leaves me. I'm okay if this person, like, I don't know, like, there's all of a sudden, I'm wondering if there was a study, if there was a study anywhere of how women who maybe have had one partner their whole life interacts differently sexually at 20 years into the marriage versus someone that's had multiple partners, because she's had to kill herself inside a few times by way of either breaking off a relationship she wanted to be in, being broken up from a relationship she did or didn't. You know what I mean? There's all those negotiation tactics in our brain that happen. And I'm just wondering if there's some negotiation tactic that happens during a marriage that pushes that spouse away energetically or chemically or whatever, and goes, I don't want to have sex with you in case something bad happens, or because you annoyed me and now I'm going to use this as a tool. I'm interested. I would be very fascinated to see someone that's never been, like, necessarily broken up with, uh and has been with the same person their whole life, if they negotiate sex differently than someone that has had multiple partners.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I'd be interested as well. I certainly know that one of the things that I think is missing in partnerships as far as what like expectations are is I don't feel like we're taught how to tolerate annoyances. And I do feel like there's a level where it's like like women change their mind a lot, and that's
Mhm.
another thing that I think is not talked about a lot is like I talk about this with my girlfriends around men when they commit, they like commit. But women, like the level of in and out in a woman's brain is frequent around like, wow, like, I like don't know, like I saw them act socially at a party and I don't know about that. And like all of a sudden, like where a man's like, okay, well, that was a weird moment. A woman like can jump so easily
Yeah.
to like, is this the right person
Protection
for me?
mode. We
Right?
get
Protection mode.
Yeah, we go in. I tell people all the time, I'm like, "You're toe in." I
Right.
can see it from a mile away. You're toe in. You are toe in and you are toe out, and you're trying to figure out, like, am I staying? Am I going? Do I kill him? Do I do I
Yeah.
do I love him? And I think that we vacillate in between those things as a protection mode quite more often than we think.
Well, and that's why I think it's important to name, right? Because I think so many times women think if they're oscillating like that, like even that's a sign that this should end, or maybe like versus like naming, like that's actually more of like a normal woman thing because
Yeah.
of protection and what you're mentioning around. It is normal to see these things and have those types of thoughts. And we need to differentiate between like, oh, that's a passing thought through my day versus like this is a repeat pattern. Like that's why I think journaling is such a great activity around like, well, if I've had this repeat thought, 2 years in a row, like now we're seeing a pattern versus like,
Yeah.
hey, that was that annoying thing, right? But I do think that tolerating annoyance is a really important thing because it's like we're not supposed to like see this person every day and be like constantly turned on by them and constantly like I love everything about you. And I think so many times it's like we see the annoyances around like I'm annoyed by that thing that they do. So like should I be together versus like this is that annoying thing I can they do and I'm accepting that and I'm learning how to tolerate this because all these other things are way more valuable to me and continuing to come back to that. I think we're just not taught that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think these conversations are huge. You have a podcast. I want to make sure and go over this. The Libido Lounge, which I see your really cool light in the background there. I
Thank
love that.
you.
My husband's like, you need to get a light. And then you have a book, Want to Want It, which I think that we should be buying for every one of our girlfriends, period. You have a million podcasts, and I don't know if they're classes. I see the little boxes all over your website with every topic under the sun.
I have a
Huge.
lot of yeah, I have paid courses, I have a lot of free giveaways, so I do try to give away as much content as I possibly
Yeah.
can. So you'll see it on my website at mylibidodoc.com. You'll see a freebies tab where you can find a lot of free content. Like you said, I have my paid podcast or my podcast Libido Lounge. And then for people that want like more, like any of my paid work is more of like step by step like journey around like start
Yeah.
with, like the exercise I taught today around like, oh, start with this, get your values, then do this, then do that. Like I have a course on desire mismatch that comes out about twice a year. It's through cohorts. And that's what it's like. Okay, desire mismatch, orgasm gap, these kind of things. And I teach you step 1, step 2, step 3. So that's generally the difference between like the free content is just like, hey, here's a topic on how to bring novelty back. Like,
Yeah.
download that free thing versus the paid content's a little bit more like step 1, step 2, step 3, that sort of thing.
I love that. Well, I so appreciate you being here because I mean, this is obviously a conversation around more than just sex. It's around mental health. It's around physical health. It's around societal health. It's around
Yes,
parenting health. It's around everything. I mean,
correct.
because you can't get to health without the body, and you can't have the body without sex, um, in some way, shape, or form. So I think that this is just an imperative conversation, and I so appreciate. Hopefully, we're not getting banned on Facebook right now.
Hopefully not.
Oh,
Try to keep
oh,
this conversation like as PG as possible
I
with the
know
topic.
it's hard, but you know what? It's funny though but that's exactly what we're talking about. Is we're
It
talking
is.
about normal bodily situations, and then the same breath also about like how that could get you banned, which is unfortunate. Like this is just it's sad. We can talk about probably guns all day, but this is something that could probably get us in trouble. Well,
Yep,
whatever.
exactly.
At your website again is
MyLibidoDoc.com. And then, like I said, my book is Want to Wanted. And right now on pre-sale, just so everybody knows, if you buy it on pre-sale, I am giving away a ton of my courses for free as almost $300 worth of value.
I did see that.
Yeah. So I'm thanking people for, being early purchasers of my book. So if you go to wanttowantit.com, you'll see how to get all those pre-sale bonuses as well.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much. I'll see you guys all here next week on Meredyth with the Y podcast. Thanks again, Diane.
Thanks, Meredyth.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to connect on a more personal level, head over to meredythwillits.com or on Instagram at Meredyth with a Y for behind-the-scene footage and outtakes. Please subscribe and come back each week for more Meredyth with a Y. Thanks again for listening.